Ready to expand? Let's go.
I will never forget this day. It was March 20th, 2020. It was a Friday. That's the day the oncologist looked at us and said those words. "You have cancer," to my husband. And when most people hear cancer, the first thing they think of is death. The thoughts racing through our minds in that moment were indescribable. Fear, uncertainty, every possible outcome played at the same time. I remember watching my husband's face in that moment, and I could see him starting to break down. And something inside of me shifted, and I said, no. We have way too many people in our family who have moved through this experience of cancer and have gotten through it. And I'm very intentional when I say this experience and not a fight, because our words matter. When we say someone is fighting, to me, it sounds like a battle. You either win or you lose. But to me, illness isn't a battle. It's an inward journey. The person with the illness is basically going through this kind of solitude. They go inward into the darkness to process, to listen, to transform. And at the same time, the caregiver enters their own darkness. Because while they're going through an inward alone, you're standing beside them, trying to be strong, trying to hold hope, not knowing the outcome either. I didn't know who I was in that moment. I didn't know who I would become. And that's when the caregiver mask began to take shape. See, what people don't tell you about caregiving is that it doesn't happen all at once. It happens quietly. It happens the moment you stop asking, how am I doing? Or start only asking, are you okay? Because here's the truth that most caregivers never say out loud. Caregiving is lived in the shadows. You're not the one that people are usually checking on. You're the one people are expecting to be strong. You're not asked, like, how are you holding up? You're asked, how is he or how is she? Every single time. And so you learn how to disappear, even while you're still standing in the room. The caregiver mask doesn't show up as a weakness. It shows up as responsibility, stability, leadership. You become the strong one, the steady one, the dependable one. Especially in 2020, when the world shut down and cancer treatments became rooms of isolation. There were weeks where my husband had to stay in the hospital until his chemo fully left his body. And that meant he was processing his own solitude, and I was processing mine. I couldn't take away his pain. I couldn't fix what I didn't understand. I couldn't promise him a future that neither of us knew we had. So I learned how to survive in silence, how to hold space instead of breaking, how to pour from a cup I didn't know was truly empty. But this is where the caregiver mask is the most dangerous, because it makes you forget that you have a self to return to. I've seen women care for parents and partners and children for years, sometimes decades. And when that journey ends, they collapse into identity grief. I had a woman in my program who said, I don't know who I am now that my mother is gone. I don't know where to start. I don't know how to live now that she is no longer here. And I told her, go back to who you were before the caregiving began, before the crisis shaped a new version of you, before responsibility swallowed your identity whole. What made you laugh? What brought you joy? What did you love before survival became a full-time job? Because caregiving creates a new identity inside of you, one built from devotion, duty, love, fear, hope, and exhaustion. But once the caregiver ends, you're forced to meet yourself again, the self you abandoned to keep someone else alive. That reunion is the beginning of your rebirth. That's why caregiving became my greatest catalyst. It stripped me down, broke me, remade me, and then handed me back to myself. So here's the part of caregiving almost no one talks about. The caregiving role is not random. It's not just duty. It's not just circumstances. It is a soul level agreement. On a soul contractual level, the caregiver is not here to save someone. They are here to be initiated in a way. Because caregiving isn't about what you give, it's about what gets stripped away. Caregiving strips away the illusion that you are limitless. It strips away the belief that love means sacrifice without boundaries. It strips away the idea that your worth is tied to how much you endure. The Caregiver Mask teaches lessons most people never volunteer for. How to love without disappearing, how to hold devotion without self-abandonment, how to witness pain without assuming responsibility for it. On a soul level, caregiving asks one question over and over and over again. Can you show up without erasing yourself? Because many caregivers didn't learn self-worth in safety. They learned it through usefulness, through being needed, through being reliable. So the caregiver contract comes to expose that pattern, not to punish you, but to awaken you. This mask forms when saying no feels like abandonment, when rest feels like guilt, when your identity becomes tied to surviving someone else's crisis. And here's the part that changes everything. When you stay in that caregiving identity too long, you block your own expansion. You stop receiving, you stop asking, you stop imagining a life beyond responsibility. And that's when the mask must be named. Because what you can name, you can release. This is the moment the soul contract shifts. Because I'm not here to disappear anymore. I'm not here to survive quietly. I'm here to live fully, visibly, and whole. And so are you. See, I didn't lose myself in caregiving. I found the part of me that needed to come home. Caregiving was my catalyst for my growth. And if you're wearing that mask right now, you're not weak. You're not any of that. You are awakening. Unmasking continues. Expand, Nicole. Expand.